In this video, I'll be setting up the Comgrow Z1 laser tool from Comgrow along with their honeycomb and their rotary attachment. Welcome back to the Laser Channel. I'm your host, Greg, and I'm very excited about unboxing and setting these components up that were sent to me by Comgrow. Let's get started. And with a lot of these unboxings, what I'd like to do is just start cutting the tape and then just let that tape kind of open itself up. That way I don't risk damaging anything cutting into the box, especially when I cut across the top here. The box construction, it's a nice double wall cardboard that's very suitable for shipping, and I'm greeted on the top with a nice piece of foam. And we've got a very nice user manual. I'm going to break in for just a second. During the unboxing, we were first greeted by this paper manual. I discovered later on when I got to the software portion that is located on this included SD card along with the included card reader that the SD card includes all the updated manuals that have a lot more information, a lot more pictures, and clarified a lot of the questions that I had during the assembly of the Comgrow Z1. And the first thing that I like to do when setting these up is I'll set the instruction manual off to the side and then just simply empty all the pieces and parts off to the side and then do a quick inventory. And this last piece looks like it is partially assembled for our convenience during the assembly process, and this one does look like it's going to take just a little bit to get out of this foam that's packaged very well. Step one whenever I assemble a machine like this is, again, always to take inventory. Nothing's more frustrating than getting halfway through and realizing maybe you missed a part or you think you're missing a part when it's actually still in the box. A quick rundown of the inventory parts is the X-axis for the kit. And it's very easy to identify the parts. We'll hold that up for the top camera. That each of the parts has a description and a very clear picture of what it is that we need. We have a front profile rail, a back profile rail, a left profile rail, and a right profile rail. I'm not sure which one is which right now, but we'll get that figured out as we get to the assembly. 4 foot supports and some tools. We'll see what bag these are in. And it calls out for 4 of these small Allen key sets, safety goggles, and 2 lengths of the belt. So I've got 1 length and 2 lengths. 1 power adapter. That's the power supply, the power module there for the laser. And here's the power adapter, the power cord that goes with it. The laser module, and with all the empty bags that I have, I like to put those in the empty box that the unit came in. That way if I missed any small pieces or parts that were located in the bag, I know exactly where to look for them. And we have 5 sample boards that come with the kit, 1 USB cable. Mine happens to be a nice blue color. I like that. Kind of goes with the accent colors of the machine. And 1 SD card. And it has the SD card along with a card reader, and they were both packaged in the same bag. That's a nice convenience. And on to the next page. And that shows all the parts that are in the parts kit. So I do have more parts up here that I do know are a part of assembling everything. I paused the camera for just a minute before so that I could review the instructions for the assembly of the laser tool. I like to lay out the pieces and parts to match up in the manual and read through the manual once or twice to make sure it makes sense in my head, along with if I need to go to the manufacturer's website and reference a few images there. One thing I did run across is one of these rails does have a limit switch on that, and this limit switch does go on what would be your right-hand side with the rail with the scales on your left-hand side. With that covered, let's start some of the assembly. The other key thing that I found in the instructions was that all of these rails lay flat. So the outside rails are square rails, but the front and back ones are double the height but single stack on the width. And the instructions want all of this to lay flat. And what I like to do is to make sure that everything is square and aligned correctly is I'm actually going to flip the assembly over. I'm on a nice flat clean table here, and I'll use this flat clean table to do the final tightening on all 4 fasteners in the corner. And the last corner here, I'm tightening this up. Once the wrench stops, I like to go maybe about 1/8 of a turn, maybe a little bit less. That way I know that that fastener is absolutely tight without pulling the threads out. The way this is constructed during assembly is this is what we call a self-squaring assembly. So as we snug up all of the fasteners in each of the corners, it will pull itself in the correct squared position. And the next step has us sliding the main gantry unit onto this frame. That is a nice snug fit. Next, we'll attach the controller box to the underside of the frame. And with both fasteners installed, I'll go ahead and do that final tightening on this. And the next step is we'll just attach the feet to the bottom side since we have our assembly flipped upside down. On each of the legs, there are 2 mounting holes. One will just have a fastener going through that attaches directly to the frame. The other has a T-slot nut, which is one of these rectangular pieces in my hand. And the neat thing about these T-slot nuts is it can go directly on top of the rail, and as you tighten it, that nut will turn 90 degrees and lock itself in position. On each leg, as I mentioned, there's 2 fasteners. I would suggest starting to attach the fastener that goes directly into the frame, and then the side that has the nut, getting that one second. And the reason being is the fastener, the first one, will locate where the second one goes. And I'm simply switching out to my own set of Allen wrench keys. One side does have what we call a ball end, and it allows the wrench to kind of pivot off to the side to clear anything in the way. You can certainly use the wrenches that come with the kit. There's nothing wrong with them. But for the sake of this video and to keep things moving along, I like to use the ball end just because it is quite a bit quicker. Now flip this over. Next step calls for the installation of the 2 belts on both sides of the gantry crane. I took a second just to move one of the cameras so that we can more clearly see running the belt through this area. So the trick is to feed it underneath the rear wheel, and I'm going to use one of the Allen keys from the kit to pick up the front end of that belt. That's kind of the tricky part in all of this. And that belt picks up and then goes over the top of the pulley. I'm going to hold the belt on top of the pulley while I go underneath the front wheel. There we go. That's not so bad at all. Again, I'll use the Allen wrench key to pick up the front side of the belt. And I'll just kind of feed the belt through until I reach the front of the rail. And I've got a little bit of belt hanging off the back of the rail and a little bit in the front, which is nice that they didn't cut the belt too short. Having an extra inch or two on some of these parts, whether it's the belt or a wiring harness, really goes a long way. So I'll continue on with attaching the anchor points, and that utilizes these 4 flat nuts along with the remaining screws that we have in the kit. And again, outside of the machine, I'll just get this started a little bit. And I'm going to push this front belt in just a tad, just because off the front I don't want the belt sticking out too much. And again, I'm just tightening that fastener until I feel the slightest little bit of resistance. And same thing over here, I'm going to pull that belt back just a little bit. Not going to fully tighten it just yet, just simply putting the fasteners in place for now. Just as the frame was self-squaring when we put our 4 fasteners in on the sides, this top gantry is also self-squaring on these side rails. So it's very easy to tension the belts. I'm going to just simply go up to the front anchor point and tighten that down until it's nice and snug. And then I'm going to just pull on the back part of the belt until I've got a nice tension on it. And again, I'll just tighten that fastener down. There, and that is nice and tight. I'm going to rock this assembly back and forth just a little bit and make sure that this corner is nice and snug. And again, I'm going to rock this back and forth. And what I'm doing is making sure that the teeth of the pulleys are lining up with the teeth of the belts and making sure that they're not out of sync, that they're cogged in sync so that they work together instead of fighting each other just a little bit. I'm going to pull on the back part of the belt here to set the final tension. And a nice way to not over tighten the fasteners on these belts, because you can over tighten these and actually cut into the belt, and then that belt will actually move around a little bit, is when I tighten these down, I'm using the short side of the wrench. Let me grab a silver one that shows up better on camera. I'm using this short little handle so I can only tighten it so much. If I used the large end here, I can really put a lot of force on that and actually damage the belt. And a key note on these belts, it's normal for these to stretch out with a little bit of use. So maybe after the first day or two of utilizing the machine and having it move around, go back and check the tension on the belts. And the last step that we have is to connect all of the connectors into the motors. And the nice thing on this upper gantry is that they've already have wires that are ran through some of the frame members, so it's simply a connector right next to a motor, and they even have a label on that connector saying Y1 for, I believe, the Y axes. And the connectors are keyed. They can only go in one way. And let me turn this over and make sure that this other motor is plugged in. There's another motor down here, and this one is labeled Y2. And again, that connector is also keyed, so it only goes in one way, and there's just enough length in the cable to manipulate that connector to fit it up to the motor. Since I have the assembly upside down, there is a connector up front for the limit switch. And again, all these connectors are keyed, so they only go in one way, and we just want to make sure that they are seated in all the way. And for the last step, I'm going to attach the laser module to the frame. And on the laser module itself, there is a protective tape across the lens with a quality check that this has in fact passed. So I'll go ahead and remove that. And this is a neat feature that this is just held in by magnetics. It's very easy then to remove this. For the installation of the laser module onto the machine, we do need to temporarily remove the rail that it attaches to in order to get the fasteners secured from the back side of the assembly. And so here's the back side of the laser module, and here's the mating side of the adjustment bracket. On the back side, there's a configuration where I can move the blue bracket so that there will be a fastener that lines up with the laser module in each of the 4 corners. Let's take a closer look at that. See that in each of the corners on the top slots that there is a fastener that lines up. I'm going to go ahead and install those fasteners. And here's another tip. When I'm putting these in, they're a little bit smaller screws, and so I only like to turn the screw in by 1 or 2 turns. That way this bracket can rattle around quite a bit, and it leaves me a lot of room to find that next screw that I'm trying to attach in. If I tighten down this blue bracket with the very first fastener, it makes it a little bit more difficult to manipulate the blue bracket, the laser module, and a screw and a wrench to get that in place. And it's worth pointing out that there's a number of different attachments here for the thumb screws, along with some very ample slots on the side. So there's a lot of versatility as you work on different projects that are maybe from flat paper to some 3-dimensional project or product that you have that has some height to it where you may need to raise this up. And it's a really neat feature built into the Z1 machine that you don't necessarily have to raise the entire machine up. You can just raise the laser module. When attaching the laser module to the main machine, I do recommend using all 4 of the thumb screws and try and get the thumb screws as far apart from one another as possible. That will give this laser module the best opportunity to hold straight. If the screws are close together, you can develop a little bit of a tilt in there. It probably won't affect your project, but I always like to put best practices forward for the best results. I've moved the camera so that you can better see the top of the circuit board. And I did grab my cheater glasses because I'm getting old and I can't see things that are quite small. So the first connector, let me grab a pointer here for you. The first connector here says PWM, and then the next connector has power connectors for power, ground, and common. So that PWM connector, we're going to put that closest to you as labeled on the circuit board. And then the next connector, the power, will be right behind. And the last step would be to attach the power cable to the power adapter. Before we take a look at this rotary attachment, we'll take a look at the honeycomb that is inside of this box. We'll go ahead and open this up. When we open this up, I'm greeted by 4 felt pads to put underneath here, underneath the honeycomb. And I have the honeycomb that is all wrapped in stretchy wrap. I'm going to set this off to the side for a second. The box that it came in is one of these boxes. It's just your standard thin cardboard that's corrugated. If you're ordering this separately down the road, I would hope that Comgrow would send this inside of yet another box. I'm not sure that this box alone would survive very well in shipping just due to the size and weight of it. And there is a metal plate on the back side. Let me cut this open without cutting myself. I've got one of the corners that came off inside of the wrapper here. This helps illustrate the point where I like to keep all of the bags and shipping materials in the box that it came in. That way down the road, if I'm wondering why I'm missing a corner protector off of the honeycomb or any other device, I know that I can go back in all the materials that it was shipped in, and I can go, oh, there was a piece that was stuck to something else. For now, I'm going to remove all of these corner protectors. And now there's an easy tray here to collect all of the little bits that fall off of our projects. So the honeycomb accessory is very straightforward. Off camera, I can attach these foot pads underneath here before placing the honeycomb on the included tray. There's always the option too of flipping the tray over and setting the honeycomb on top of that. The relevance of putting these felt pads underneath the honeycomb is to space that up off of this protective sheet metal so that any smoke or fumes that are pushed through the honeycomb have a way to get out easily. Two of the neat things that I like about this honeycomb is that the honeycomb is magnetic. So if you've watched the other videos on this channel, you know that I am a big fan of these magnetic strips to hold down or hold in place captivated pieces of wood or paper or anything for our projects. The other thing that's really neat is these wooden tees that I have for hold downs do look like they fit very closely on here. Overall, the honeycomb is really straightforward. There's not too many things that you can mess up on it, but I think Comgrow went the extra step with making the metal tray that comes with the honeycomb having that raised lip on the outside, so as you go and clean your work area, all of those spent pieces that fell through the honeycomb stay on that tray. The last thing that I'd like to show you is the rotary attachment for the laser machine. Again, this is the first time that I'm opening this box. I'm greeted by a nice piece of foam on top. Again, the customary cutout shaped foam to keep all the pieces and parts of this accessory in place during shipping to reduce and eliminate any shipping damage. And again, this box is the customary packaging cardboard. It's that thinner cardboard. So I hope if you order this separately from when you order the entire machine, that Comgrow puts this inside of another box for a little bit more protection. But certainly with all of the foam protection around the accessory inside, I think it would still be very well protected. Inside of the box was contained the main rotary unit with a flying lead coming out of the motor for plug-in, and the Y attachment for the tail end of the rotary unit if you have something like an irregular shaped glass like a wine glass. It also includes 2 wiring harnesses and the manual. I'm actually pretty excited about this rotary unit because the rollers, the hot dog rollers I call them, they are rubber covered. That way if you have any smooth glass or shiny smooth metal, there's far less of a chance for that work to slip on these rollers. The other thing that I really like about the rotary attachment is this wheel assembly that attaches to the tail end of the rotary unit. It attaches with a nice thumb screw, very similar to the height adjustment on the laser on the main unit. So this is very neat because when I have that irregular shaped project on here, I can use this bracket as a height adjustment to bring my work in level to the laser. Let me grab a couple of examples to show you what I mean. Before I go into any more detail on the rotary unit, I have it on a piece of foam on the honeycomb on my spoiler board. Normally I would remove the foam, the honeycomb, and just place this rotary unit directly on my spoiler board. But for the sake of saving time in this video, I have it stacked up like this, but don't take this as how you should do that. The really neat thing about this Y located on the end is when I place a project piece on there, this top surface needs to be flat and level to the laser to keep the laser in focus as it traverses back and forth during the process. I can see when I put a level on top that that bubble goes right in the center, and this is fully adjustable. And this works equally as well when we do a wine glass. So here we can see that it's not quite level, and I can easily adjust that thumb screw and make an adjustment and bring that closer into level. But we'll see that this does have a curve to it. So what we end up doing is we find where the main part of our design is, the most important part, and we put that in focus, knowing that other parts might fall out of focus. And normally on the glass, we try and keep most of it on focus on this top side of the bulge in the glass, knowing that the bottom side, again, will be out of focus. But when we use a glass, most of the time our viewing angle is from the top and not from the bottom side, unless you fell off your bar stool. This is the first part of the video where we did all of the unboxing and setting up of these components. The next part will be installing the software for the laser module itself. I'll run a quick and easy project that you can follow along at home. Before we start with the software and the computer work, just wanted to clarify a couple things after I read the manual that was located on the SD card. That manual has a lot more updated information. It did answer very clearly what side the rails went on, along with where the limit switch for the homing is positioned. It also answered what these wrenches are for, and specifically the wrenches are to adjust the bottom idler on the gantry track to make sure that you have a nice tight fit. The other questions that I had were also answered by the manual, along with this cable clamp, which is located underneath the front to keep the cable going out the side so that it does not interfere with the work area. I also had questions on this piece of clear acrylic. This lays flat on your work area, and that is used to set the adjustment on the height of the laser to make sure that the laser is in focus. The other thing that I ran across is I do have this back bar is in the wrong position. I have to flip it from end to end. I'm going to go ahead and fix these couple little things because I just like to make sure things are good and correct. This looks a lot better, and that makes me feel good. To power up and connect our machine to the computer is very easy. The power cable simply attaches to the plug on the main control unit, along with the USB cable on the opposite side. And I like to route the cables on the outside of the frame. That way, during operation, they do not fall inside of the work area during a project where the laser beam can cut over our cable. On my particular computer, I don't have the big USB connector. I have that smaller USB-C connector. That's the small oval one. So I use an adapter, and I have not had a problem using this adapter on the X-Tool D1 or the Comgrow Z1. And we'll see as soon as I plug that in, I have a green light starts blinking slowly on the front of the command unit. With both the power and the USB cable connected up to the main unit, I'm going to power on, and I'll hear the fan start up on the laser module itself. During the software installation, the SD card comes with laser gerbil. I recommend installing that first just because there's a few pieces of software that get installed to help the computer communicate with the main power unit on the machine. And then I'll be running LightBurn on here, and I'll provide you with a file that will automatically tell LightBurn that this is a Comgrow Z1 machine, and it has all of the parameters of the workspace along with what type of laser power unit is attached to the machine. I've installed laser gerbil on my computer. It's very easy, straightforward, and the number one thing that you need to do once you have this installed is we'll go up to Tools and we'll go Install CH360 Driver, and that will go through and ask if we want to install that. We'll click Yes. We'll click Install, and the driver installed successfully. Now close this out. We come up to this icon here that says Connect, and I get another indication saying that we have in fact connected to the machine. I can come down to the corner here on homing, and I click on that once, and the laser module should move to the bottom left-hand corner. and it's now moving. When it reaches the corner, you'll hear it buzz a little bit. It will back off and reacquire the limit switches. It does a double check to make sure that it grabs the most accurate homing coordinates possible for the machine. This is all we needed to do in Laser Gerbil. I'm going to close this window out. It's important to have Laser Gerbil completely closed out before starting LightBurn because we cannot have two different softwares connected up to the machine tool at the same time. Before starting LightBurn, we need to go onto that SD card. To keep things simple, I simply took all those files and copied them over to my computer. And under driver files, we go under our computer that we're using. I'm using a Windows computer, and here I have a CH340 driver. I'll double click on that. Again, I'll ask if I'd like to install it. I'll say yes. And I've already installed this once before, and we see here that it went up 1 rev. And again, the driver installed successfully, so I can close all of this out. Close this window out, and now I can start LightBurn. What we just installed was a piece of software that allows LightBurn to communicate with our laser machine. Now previously I had an Xtool D1 machine hooked up to my computer, and the first thing that I want to do is click on Devices, and I get this little pop-up window, and I want to import. And this is going to be the file that I provide for you. And I'll have this file, I'll relabel it so it says Comgrow Z1 device profile. We'll open that. We'll click on that once and say OK. That file tells LightBurn everything about the machine that it needs to know. I'll come over to the drop-down menu, and this is how you can have multiple machines running off of one LightBurn software. I'll select the Comgrow Z1, and we'll see that everything is okay. It is ready. If I move up to the Move panel here, and when I click the manual move, I'm moving 50 millimeters at a time. We see that we can move this anywhere that we want to within our workspace. I can also tell it to home. So that is pretty neat. Let's go ahead and make a quick little project here. We'll type in something that says, let's do all caps, Comgrow. Click back on the arrow. I'm going to use this blue layer, 01. I have some settings in there of a fairly low speed at a low power. I was doing some testing before I started filming, and I'm going to click on a rectangle here and just draw a box around that. With that box highlighted, I'm going to select another layer. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to put a radius on the corners. So once I go back onto my arrow cursor, I can click on here, and then I can click on the corners, and I can round each of those corners. Go back to my cursor, make sure that my outline box is highlighted, and I can move this around, and when I get near the center, I will see my arrow turn into a little crosshairs, and now I know that this box is completely centered around the word Comgrow. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. Up at the top, I'm going to see the size is 165 millimeters wide. That's a bit large for what I'd like to do, so I'm going to lock this dimension down so that when I change the height from 38 millimeters down to, let's say, 20 millimeters, that the width also changes with that. And I saw a mistake that I had, that I didn't have everything highlighted. I'm going to Control Z to undo what I last did. Now I can simply drag a box over everything with the cursor highlighted. And let's do that again. We'll change the height to 20. And now everything is sized correctly. Going to grab a piece of project wood to put in. And to securely fasten the wood to the honeycomb, I'm going to use my favorite magnetic strips that I found on Amazon. They're red on one side because they're actually sticky, meant to peel that release liner off and stick it onto something. I just leave the release liner on. Now when I go back over to the manual move tab, I can index the laser over to the start area. And I'll check the height with the included gauge. And that looks good. And on the screen, I have this extra little crosshair with a red dot in the middle. That is the position of the laser. I just moved it, and now I moved it again. So I'm going to move our work area because I want the laser to start in the lower left-hand corner. And before I start, I just want to point out, this is the significance of having a device that can home. So when we have a design, it's kind of like a pirate map. It tells the laser to walk so many paces in one direction and then move several paces in another direction. And when it follows that treasure map, if you will, when you're done, you should have something that you had on your screen. Your design comes out on the laser machine. Now, this is all good. However, just like most maps, they're relatively useless unless you know where the starting point is and where you currently are. And that's what the homing position does, is when this homes up in the corner, it now knows that everywhere expanding out from that corner is the work area. And the neat thing about this is when we're done, this laser, I believe it will go back to the homing point, or it will now be called the origin. And I can keep loading blanks into the same spot. And each time I hit start in LightBurn, it will go back to the same spot in the work area and do the same design over and over and over again. Before we hit start, I always like to frame out to make sure that the laser module is over the work area. That looks good. I'm going to go over to cuts and lines, and what I have drawn in blue, I have as a line. I do this just simply because it runs a lot faster. The power level is at 10%, which I think is a bit low. I'm going to try 65%. And the blue line, this cutout, I actually want that to cut out, so I'm going at a fairly slow speed at a relatively high power level. I stepped away for just a moment to open the doors in the shop and turn a fan on. You might hear that soft hum in the background. We are engraving and cutting wood, and this will throw off an amount of smoke while it does that. And I'm going to put on the included safety glasses that come with it. And they are adjustable, which is really nice. They fit both adults and young children. And it did not cut it out. It did go back to the origin position. And looking back into the computer, I see that I had the cutout layer was turned off. So what I can do is turn that layer on, and I don't need to engrave again. I can tell from my viewpoint that that turned out great. I'm going to turn that layer off, and I'm going to put the glasses back on again. And this is the neat thing about being able to home. The laser is able to move out of the way, and without moving anything, I can simply hit start, and it's going to go and now do the cutout. And And that did cut all the way out. It was just such a fine focused laser that it just stayed in the workpiece. Here's a close-up of what that looks like. And I didn't refine the settings on here. I found a setting strong enough to create the outline for the Comgrow, and then a setting just strong enough to do the cutout, and it looks really good. And with the Honeycomb, I don't have any of that ash or any of that flame over on the back side. That is the main advantage of using a Honeycomb. That was a fun first project to try on the Comgrow Z1 machine. I hope that you'll try it out. I'll include the files in the description down below, along with the manual files on assembling and setting up the software on here. I encourage you to use the software files that come with the machine for the latest and greatest files, because I don't know if you're going to be watching this video tomorrow or a year from now, but I do want to provide some of those files if you're a potential buyer and would like to see what the manual looks like. I'll also include the file for LightBurn for how easy it is to just plop that file in there, and that tells LightBurn everything that it needs to know about this machine. Before I offer my final thoughts on the machine, now is a good time to like, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. It really does help the channel out, and the more attention that the channel gets, the more content I can produce like this and get materials and machines sent from manufacturers so that you can get a first glimpse of it before you purchase it yourself. Having assembled this and installed the software, I like to start out with a couple things that would maybe be different. The manual, for one, that's kind of a small sticking point for me. It's the first thing that I'm greeted with when I open the box is an outdated manual. I know I've pointed it out, but the current files are on the SD card. It'd be nice if they had a note that said, simply look at the SD card. So I wouldn't count that as a negative as you viewers would purchase this, but me coming into it new, not having that information, it was a slight frustration. The software part, I guess, would be the next part on it. I have to install Laser Gerbil and install a driver in there, and then back out of that, and then install that other file before opening LightBurn, but that was the easy part. I did a lot of work behind the scenes for you by providing that device settings file for you that tells the work area of the machine and all the details with that to make it much, much easier for you to use. I also tested that file by turning off the machine and the computer and then powering them back up at different times in different orders to make sure that the computer does in fact connect and talk to the main unit. With those couple short things covered that I'd like to see updated by Comgrow, the positives on it is it's a nice looking machine. It assembles pretty easily, especially when you use the updated instruction manuals on it. The color scheme is followed throughout the entire machine, and the fit and finish on here I have nothing to complain about. My background is with machineries in the industrial setting, and before I received this machine, I was apprehensive about these side rails. They're extruded aluminum 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters, and I wasn't too sure if it would really be up for the task. But these look like they were specially made for Comgrow. These channels have a slight chamfer on the edges, and that correlates with a slight chamfer on the wheels. Now these wheels will bed down and kind of conform more perfectly, if you will, down to that channel. So this will just run smoother and smoother as time goes on. The homing sequence on here, where it goes to that front corner, that is a really neat feature. Off camera, I set up a piece of project wood somewhere out here near the middle, and I just did a light burn where it barely even left a mark on the wood, and I did that about 10 times back and forth, and it kept drawing the circle over the same spot over and over and over again. And that, again, is really one of the main points of having a homing sequence. Is this laser module always knows where it is in the work area, and that's a huge benefit for repeatability, accuracy, and being able to do batch projects. And you might think, well, if I'm buying this for a home hobby tool, I'm not really running it as a business necessarily, even though you could. You might have grandchildren or neighbors, or you just want to make multiples of one type of design or project. In these videos that I produce for you, I try and keep them detailed and informative while trying to keep the length down, because a product review, nobody wants to really watch a 45-minute product review. But to the other extreme, if it's only 5 minutes long, I think it skips so much detail. It's really just a 5-minute commercial, if you will. In the next video upcoming, I'll be going over a project with the rotary attachment. I think for this video, we've covered quite enough on it. But overall, I think I could recommend this product to anybody, providing that you've watched the video and you have a couple of the tips that I provide for you on where to find the latest manual and that file for LightBurn. You can certainly use laser gerbil. It is included with the kit. It is free, and there are some people that use it. I tried doing a project with it, and I just found that I'm just so used to using LightBurn. LightBurn is so much more fluid. However, it is a paid version, and I believe currently LightBurn for this type of tool is $60. But they do offer a 30-day free trial, and that free trial is the full-blown version of LightBurn. There's nothing that is withheld or locked until you purchase the full version. So it's a great way to set up your machine, install LightBurn, try it for 30 days, and make sure that you like it before you buy the license key. I had a lot of fun making this video for you. I hope you enjoy it. Again, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment down below, especially if you'd like to see other products being reviewed on this channel, along with if you'd like to see a project specific video made. I'd like to cover that as well. In upcoming videos, I'll be showing the complete accessories for the Comgrow Z1 laser machine, which includes the laser enclosure. That is a great way to keep dust off of your machine and to evacuate the smoke produced during projects. Just like the small piece of wood that we made before that said Comgrow on it, just that little piece of work produced a lot of smoke. So the nice thing about this enclosure is we can hook a hose up to the side and actually evacuate all of that smoke safely outside the workroom. We also have an air assist kit that is made specifically for the Comgrow Z1 and the X-Tool D1, and we'll install that when we put the rest of the accessories on our Z1 machine. Until next time, have fun, be safe, and be creative.